All right, let's get to the running backs and the guys at the top of our rankings. I mean, no Christian McCaffrey, no Saquon Barkley. The guys at the top of our rankings: Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry. All totally three fine players, but normally there are other guys at the top of our rankings, and now we are forced to move on in this running back apocalypse. Will, who are the guys that you have at the top of your rankings?
Yeah, I mean, it's Henry. Like I mentioned, the Vikings. I think this is a bounce back spot for him. I think people will be scared of Derrick Henry after last week, and that like how the Titans scored 33 points and Derrick Henry. I mean, I guess it just should be obvious when he's 60% owned, and like they've still managed to score 33 points, and like, he rushes for 84 yards. I mean, that's just how DFS works, I guess. Yeah, I think Henry and Zeke, and you know what, Kamara, I'm fine with there. I think the guy that you could even sneak into the top that and I don't do the weekly rankings. I leave that to Jamie and those guys. So I may be insane with this, but like Chris Carson is really intriguing to me in a game that should be a shootout because of just how well he's played in the passing game. And we should expect, I think, a lot of points scored in that. So like, if you think Zeke can be a top tier running back, why can't Chris Carson?
All right, Sean, how did your top three shake out?
Yeah, so I have Zeke, Henry, and Kamara, and I think one of the things that gives me pause with Tannehill is just the fact that Derrick Henry has 0 touchdowns this year. So, Tannehill has been touchdown dependent, 24 attempts, I think, last game. So, I mean, eventually Derrick Henry's going to get his. So that's why I still have Henry pretty high. It remains to be seen if Darrington Evans returns this week. Henry hasn't really shown as much as I thought he would in the pass catching department, but I think he still has some upside there. So I still have Henry number 2, but Kamara is making a solid case right now. Without Michael Thomas, I think they're going to lean on him a ton. So I think by the end of the week, I could have Kamara number 2, but either way, it's a three-way battle, and Zeke is clearly number 1 in this potential shootout against the Seahawks.
All right, Raymond, what about you?
Yeah, I have Zeke number 1. I love the usage. I like that he's getting work in the passing game. I believe Pollard only played about under 10 snaps last week. Zeke was really the workhorse, and Pollard hasn't been working it as much as maybe we thought. And then number 2, still Derrick Henry. This Vikings defense, it doesn't seem to be getting fixed quick enough. And Derrick Henry's a guy that's still getting pretty much almost every backfield touch. He's getting a ton of snaps. And then Alvin Kamara, he's doing his thing, catching footballs. It's a high-scoring game. I believe the total is around 53 in Green Bay and New Orleans with a close spread of 3 points. So that's a very good spot for him. And Drew Brees, like, he looks off. He doesn't look good. He looks old, and it looks like the only guy he can really consistently connect with is Alvin Kamara. So expecting a ton more of AK this week.
All right, one guy I have in my top 3, Josh Jacobs. We have the Raiders on the road as underdogs. Obviously, get your odds at BetMGM in. Right now, they are 5.5 point underdogs. But I think we're going to see the Raiders continue to have a run-heavy approach. I think they're going to be able to keep the game close. And I think, we're seeing Jacobs actually get more usage in the receiving game than we had anticipated. And so I have Jacobs in my top 3. Will, I'd kind of like to get your thoughts on Josh Jacobs and what you see for him.
By the way, the other guy that I think could sneak in the top 3 and wasn't on my undervalued list, but I want to mention, Jonathan Taylor. Like, they're going to feed him against the Jets, and the Jets are terrible. As far as Jacobs goes, you're right. We were doing a Twitch stream on Sunday, and Nando DeFino of The Athletic was on with me and Adam Azer, and he was saying if you redrafted, he would go with Josh Jacobs as the top 3 in terms of guys that you would take right now, with McCaffrey banged up and Saquon out for the year, like if you redrafted for the rest of the season. And I thought it was a little crazy because I didn't, I was like, I want to see what happens in, if there's a negative game script against a team like the Saints. Is Josh Jacobs still out there? Is he still catching the passes? Do they go with Jalen Richard? And John Gruden is just going to go with Josh Jacobs. He's going to make Josh Jacobs the receiving back a thing. There was a rumor out there before the season that Gruden was irate, just incensed that Kyler Murray won Rookie of the Year instead of Josh Jacobs, and that he was going to show everybody what Josh Jacobs could do by unleashing him and like just turning him to a workhorse and using him in the passing game. And Jacobs worked on his passing skills. They've targeted him a ton in the receiving game. We know Derek Carr loves to check down. So if you're in a situation as a running back, you're gonna see targets from Derek Carr in the passing game. And Jacobs is a workhorse with a very good offensive line that even looked good shorthanded. They were still creating holes after Trent Brown was gone and after losing Richie Incognito in the middle of the game. So I think Josh Jacobs is, he's a slam dunk week in and week out. And New England's rush defense may be a little vulnerable against this Oakland rushing attack.
All right, Will, someone you are relatively high on.
I have on this list, the two guys I included, sort of more sleeper options, but Kenyon Drake and then Darrell Henderson. Drake specifically, I think has played pretty well so far this year, but he hadn't gotten the scores quite yet. I think they've been wanting to feed DeAndre Hopkins for the narrative to make sure that everybody knows DeAndre Hopkins is awesome. And Drake has gone up against the 49ers, who were completely healthy at the time, and the Washington football team. And those are two of the best defensive lines in football when they're healthy, great at stopping the run. And who's not good at stopping anybody? The Detroit Lions. So I like Kenyon Drake to get a healthy dose here in this game. I think they could be up by a bunch of points and they're just pounding the ball. And then Henderson, I've always loved his talent. I don't love the matchup this week quite as much because the Bills are a good defense. But Sean McVay's got something figured out in terms of using motion before the snap, and he's got the running game cooking again. And Henderson looks like he could be the guy with everybody else banged up.
Sean, who's someone you're high on?
I am extremely high on Miles Sanders this week against the Bengals. He's my running back 5 right now. He's only 6,400 on DK, which is way too cheap, considering just his underlying usage last week was a true workhorse. So, with CMC and Barkley out, it opens up the top 5. So I think that's why it's surprising to me that he's in my top 5, but not when you consider the bloodbath that was week 2. He saw 20 carries. One of them was a goal line touchdown, which is huge. He ran a route on 70% of Wentz's dropbacks. And this is a great matchup. We saw Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both put up RB1 scores against the Bengals. So I think if Miles Sanders continues this kind of usage, he's in a smash spot here. And then the other guy is Mike Davis at 5,100. He's my RB23 right now. I think of all the running backs, all the backup running backs that are becoming starters this week, he's probably the safest bet for RB2 value. And when CMC went down, he basically inherited his full role. He saw 8 targets and just 34% of the routes run. Obviously, the target rate will go down, but his routes run rate probably will be around 70% this week. He should handle most of the carries, all the goal line work. I think their backup right now is Trenton Cannon, who will probably only be a change of pace back. So while Mike Davis, is nowhere near CMC's, caliber, I think he will inherit much of that role. So he should see a ton of receptions in what should be a trailing game script. So I do like him in a full PPR format like DraftKings at 5,100 this week.
Raymond, who do you like?
James Robinson for the Jags has handled 36 of the 44 backfield touches. Jay Gruden, has been the coordinator in Jacksonville, has been a guy that's rode with these undrafted guys in the past, and it looks like he's doing that again. They're home favorite against Miami, so it should be a pretty positive game script in that one. So I think you continue to ride him. The guys that Sean and Will just mentioned, I think Kenyon Drake is way too cheap on DraftKings at just $6K. Going against the Lions that just let Aaron Jones go absolutely off. I mean, it was just silly with how bad they were on run defense. And Miles Sanders, I agree too. Look at Cincinnati and what they allowed to Nick Chubb after we were kind of worried about Chubb, in week 1, and he got right really quickly against that Cincinnati defense. Miles Sanders getting probably more of the workload than we thought he would in the passing game for Philadelphia, with Boston Scott taking a little bit more of a backseat. And then Chris Carson, he's in my top 7 at running back this week. When you have Russell Wilson at quarterback and playing like this, hitting, and not just hitting underneath passes to tight ends. Like Russell Wilson's, I think he threw a touchdown to 4 different wide receivers in last week's game, and that's against the Patriots. That's hard to do. Carson has caught touchdowns in both games, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in both games. Mm-hmm. So he's he's a guy that he's getting left open simply because how well Russell Wilson is playing. And that also is going to help them in the running game. In week 1, he had just 6 carries. Maybe people were a little bit worried. It was kind of a blowout. But in week 2, 17 carries, 72 yards, and then 3 more catches. So 20 touches. That's right where he's been his entire career as the starter for Pete Carroll, right around 20 touches per game. So love all those guys and think you keep riding James Robinson as well.
All right, a guy I'm pretty high on is Kareem Hunt. What I like about him, well, one, obviously, I think it's a good thing that the Browns are favored, just, more points that they can score. But the big thing is that I think, unlike Nick Chubb, is that he's game script independent. I think pretty much regardless of what happens in this game, he's going to have, anywhere from like 30 to 40% of the backfield carries. And I still think he's going to be targeted as a regular function of that offense. And if things don't go according to plan, then I think he could have even more fantasy upside if he ends up seeing a lot of targets. So he's someone I'm much higher on, have him in the like high end RB2 range. And that's just like not where I was expecting to have him, but because of the relatively high implied total, because of the consistent rushing workload, and then because of what he's doing as a receiver, he's someone I'm relatively high on. And Will, as it turns out, I think you are relatively low on Nick Chubb.
Yeah, just for this week, I'm a huge Nick Chubb stan. So I love Nick Chubb. I think he's the top 3 or 4 running back in the league. That's how I feel about him. I think when you watch him play, you can see it. But when you start to sort of, when you look at what's going on with a Kevin Stefanski offense, one of the things I think you can notice is he likes to limit his number 1 running back to somewhere between 18 and 25 carries. He did it every game last year. Dalvin Cook had 1 game last year with more than 25 carries. And, we saw it with Chubb against the Bengals on Thursday night, where he hit 20, and then they brought in Kareem Hunt as like a Mariano Rivera role, for lack of a better, like he came in and he closed it out, right? And I just think he thinks there's got to be some sort of analytics about how a running back performs for a certain number of carries, and he's utilizing those guys in that sense. And as good as Chubb is, and he can break off a big run, I just worry that against the Washington football team, with all of their talent on the front 4, that they can limit him enough, and that they might let Baker throw a little bit more in this game.
All right. Totally agree with you there. Raybon. No, sorry. Sean, who is someone you are relatively low on?
Well, as a person that has a ton of Boston Scott and Kareem Hunt shares, it pains me to not only be high on Miles Sanders, but I'm also low on Kareem Hunt this week. Especially
Sean, why?
Why are you doing this to Friedman? He just went like 4 and 17 on props. Let him live.
I can't help it.
So
I can't help it.
So I mean, believe me, I share your pain. I have Kareem Hunt in almost every league. So here's why. For DFS, especially at 6,100, I can't spend up for him this week. He's just off the RB2 radar. I have him RB26. But here's why. Last week he was able to crush value based on those 2 touchdowns, and it was great to see. But this is the second straight game where Chubb ran a route on more dropbacks than Hunt. 50% to 33. So this is the second straight week where Chubb has outpaced him in the passing game, which is a very big concern for Hunt. So as 6.5, 7-point favorites here, I think this does set up for a Chubb game, unfortunately. So, Hunt's going to have to keep up that insane efficiency if he's going to be seeing, 10 to 15 touchdowns, hopefully, this week. So that's why I'm down on him. I think next week at Dallas could be a different story. But I'm going to want to see his routes run, to pass up Chubb. Otherwise, that was the whole point of drafting Kareem Hunt, was to be the pass catching back. And then potentially if Nick Chubb goes down, he's, obviously a top 5 running back. But just I haven't seen the underlying usage to trust him this week in what should be a positive game script. So that's why I'm low on him. But I think long term, I think he is still, RB2. And the other guy I'm low on, sorry again, Freeman, but it's Josh Jacobs. And this is DFS only. So in season long formats, you are absolutely playing Josh Jacobs. He's a top 10 running back. Okay. Now that I got that out of the way, for DFS, I'm a little bit, hesitant to spend over 7K on him until I think Will mentioned it, until we see a negative game script, how they use him in the passing game, because he only ran around 35% of Carr's dropbacks. They use Jalen Richard, DeAndre Booker, and Alec Ingold. They combined for more routes than Josh Jacobs yesterday. So I want to be very careful about that until we see him perform in a negative game script, which it should be this week at New England. I wouldn't want to be spending that much on him, because his underlying usage is more of a 2 to 3 reception kind of guy. So if he's not going to get the 25 plus carries, where's that production going to come from? So I'm just a little bit hesitant on him in DFS only. Season long, you're absolutely playing him.
1, I'm totally dead. I'm just slayed. 2, Sean, if only we had some sort of document in which you could put in advance players that you're going to talk about. we could avoid this embarrassment that I am suffering. I am mortified, Sean.
Would you have changed your picks if I had these guys in here? Hopefully not.
No, I wouldn't.
Good. Or for wide receiver and tight end, I'll add them in right now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. My picks will be just as bad then as they were now. Ravon, who are you relatively low on?
I mean, I just want to say, Friedman, like I don't think anything can compare to the prop episode when I was like, what is it, Cooper Kupp, like to lead the league in touchdowns, and then Mike Clay was like, my number one prop, Cooper Kupp under touchdown. It's like, wow. So you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
I do agree with Sean on Hunt, though. I am a little bit worried too, just because the routes run haven't really been there over Chubb the way they were last year with Freddie Kitchens. They were using Hunt a little more as like a slot receiver. That's not really happening this season. Another player is David Johnson. Listen, this Pittsburgh defense, again, just don't mess with it. And David Johnson, even though he's getting a large percentage of the backfield usage, it's only translated into games of 13 and 14, around 14 touches each of these past 2 weeks. So, 14 and 13 touches these past 2 weeks. He hasn't topped 11 carries yet. And Houston seems to be getting a little more pass heavy, especially in these games where they're trailing. And they've only had 27 backfield carries through 2 weeks. And it's another tough matchup against Pittsburgh. So Johnson looks somewhat tempting down there at 5,400. He'll probably register as a decent value, but I just think that it's worrisome that he's not getting a lot of touches, even though he's getting pretty much all of the backfield usage, and Duke Johnson was out last week. So those are the two guys that I'm a little bit worried about. Sean, I will say about Jacobs, I don't know if you saw, but he got like banged up and he was like in and out of the game at times. I'm pretty sure he would have gotten like a couple more routes and even carries if he was like fully healthy, because at one point Jalen Richard like fumbled a toss and like it was just ugly. So that's something to monitor going forward as well.
Yeah, there's no way that Richard gets that touchdown if Jacobs isn't hurt, because Gruden was just, like beside himself after that Richard fumble. And by the way, you mentioned David Johnson. Is it possible that DeAndre Hopkins trade won't work out for the Texans? Because it feels like it might be leaning that way.
Perhaps, maybe, just a little.
Hell, Bill O'Brien, what do you do? It's the dumbest trade in the history of football.
All right, one guy I'm relatively low on is Joe Mixon. Not a high implied total for the Bengals, and he's not getting nearly the receiving workload that you would have hoped for. That said, I'm sure that Sean loves him, given that I dislike him. Sean, give us the prop.
I do not love Joe Mixon at all. So my prop is Leonard Fournette rushing yards this week. I'm not going to set it up with anything. I just have the over-under at 59.5.
Under. It's still Leonard Fournette. He's still like a 3.4 yard per carry guy that's not going to get a 46-yard run in garbage time every single week.
That was a swing run. I mean, it cashed the Buccaneers. It cashed the over. It made fantasy leagues go every which way. I will be very curious to see if Ronald Jones is given one more reprieve from the Bruce Arians doghouse or the Tom Brady doghouse, because that fumbled snap or the fumbled handoff, he didn't. I don't think he came back in. Like, I think he was out after that fumbled handoff. It was all Leonard Fournette. I just sort of wonder. I think they like Ronald Jones, and so I just sort of wonder if we might see a little Ronald Jones. I don't know. I'll take the under on Leonard Fournette. I don't trust Uncle Lynn.
Okay, I mean, as an original Ronald Jones fan, I would say I don't think they like Ronald Jones, because if they did, I don't think they would have drafted Keyshawn Vaughn or signed LaShawn McCoy and then Leonard Fournette. That said, Sean, I will take the under, but just barely.
Hmm.
I have this at, I think, 59 is
You
the
have,
projection.
okay. How
So,
many
yeah.
rushing yards do you have Ronald Jones for then? Because that's really the prop, is the split between the two.
I have him at 36.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're very close then.
And also remember that defense for the Broncos was pretty good against the run. In week 1, they held Henry to 116 on just 31 carries. And then in week 2, Connor had a 59-yard run at the end of the game, but the other 15 carries went for just 47 yards. And Benny Snell, 3 for 5. So they pretty much gave up one big play in the run game, and that's it. So that's concerning for a guy like Fournette, because like you don't expect Denver to give up another 59-yard run and Fournette to get another 46-yard run. Like
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. The matchup's not great, but I just think this game script will be pretty run heavy. That's why I'm trying to get it right. I would say the top two teams I hate projecting the most when it comes to backfields, number 1 is the Lions and number 2 is the Bucks. So I'm just hoping we get some clarity here. So it's just the Lions that I get a headache projecting. But I think you're right. It go either way, but I think that fumble, like Will mentioned, could be the door that Fournette's going to just plow right through and become the main running back going forward.
That Bucks Broncos under might be a smash spot.
Yeah, yeah.
I've already taken Broncos team total under, so I'm right with you, Will.
And we're already conceding that Jeff Driscoll will be the Nets in DFS this week, right? We all agree on that? Yeah, okay.
No.
Can't wait. Stupid sport.